What's up, kings and queens? It's your boy Dan from Daft Previews, and it's Thursday night football. The Dallas Cowboys versus the New York Giants. The Cowboys 5.5 point favorites on the road with a total over and under of 45.5 up against these New York Giants. Now, the Cowboys exposed last week against the Ravens. They lost 28-25, second consecutive loss on their home turf. The Ravens, they rushed for 45 times, 274 yards. They ran it down the Cowboys' throats. Dallas, it does deserve its props, though. Down 28-6 entering the fourth quarter. They battled back and they cut it to within 3. Dak Prescott was a beast, 379 yards, 2 scores, no interceptions. The Giants, though, upset the Cleveland Browns 21-15, a 6.5-point underdogs. Malik Neighbors, he arrived. 8 receptions, 78 yards, 2 touchdowns last week. The Giants, their defense wreaked havoc on the Cleveland Browns, 8 sacks in week 3. Now, I've got no play on the spread or the totals right now. Dallas haven't been great, although they should get the win. In terms of the totals, Dallas, they've gone over in all 3 of their games, but the Giants, they've gone under in all 3. So there's also a chance of some rain in this game too. So I'm just sticking to some player props in this one. So please let me know in the comment section who's going to cover the spread and whether the total goes over or under. Whoever predicts these correctly, they're going to go into a draw to win a 3-month outlier subscription. So I want to see who wins the spread, who covers the spread, and does the total go over or under. Now, if that sounds interesting, let's go. All right, so we're jumping straight into outlier. I will let you know what I've done for this game. Looked at the quarterbacks. I looked at the running backs. I did look at the wide receivers, but then I haven't had too much success betting on those. So it's just really just the quarterbacks and the running backs that I've got some insights on. I'll be sharing a couple of different picks for probably most of them. I haven't bet them all, so I might play this little air horn. First one we're going to look at, though, is Dak Prescott. So for Dak, the first play I want to talk through is his passing yards. Now, it's important to line shop. I'm taking the over here at 256.5. So I have bet this, but I did take it at 256.5. So be sure to line shop to get the best lines possible. Now, Dak is leading the league passing attempts and yards this season. A lot of that has to do with the game script. They've been trailing a lot, so he has been forced to pass. So I am aware of that. But this Giants secondary has been extremely weak. They're allowing a high completion rate of 79%. The Cowboys, they're likely lean on Dak's arm given their struggles in this game. 68% pass rate so far this season for the Cowboys, and I can show you that right here. 68% in their games, 58, 68, and 77. Now, I don't expect that type of pass rate, given they probably won't be trailing by as many points, so they can probably have a little bit more balance. So what I've done is I've looked at the games last season. I filtered it to the games where the Cowboys won, so we can get a better game script in here. So won by at least 1 point. And in 12 wins last year, Dak did cover the line in 8 out of the 12 games. But what I was most happy to see was they still had a 57% pass rate in this game. So we're not going to see the same type of game script, I don't think. So he's not going to throw the ball 40, 50 times, but he's going to throw it enough to cover this number. So 8 out of the 12 games, averaging 279 in the wins last year. And given how well he's been passing the ball this season, I do like it. Now, my next look is on Dak, and it's his passing touchdowns. We're looking at over 1.5. It is pretty juiced to the gill, so I don't necessarily love it. Minus 137. Now, he does have a lot of success against the Giants. Most in their last game, he threw for 4 passing touchdowns against them. Now, this Giants defense is ranked pretty poor against passing attacks, and it's showing their vulnerability in their secondary. He does have the high passing attempts as well, 32, 39, and 51 attempts in the first 3 games. It's also a favorable spot given Dak's history in primetime games. So I've looked into this, and Dak's covered this passing touchdowns line in 7 out of his last 10 primetime games. The Giants, like I said, hasn't been great defending the pass. In both week 1 and week 3, the opposition quarterbacks, they throw for 2 passing touchdowns against them, against New York. So I think it's a good look. I just don't like the odds for this. I was thinking of my round, and it's like, do we take over 1.5 passing touchdowns with 200 passing yards to play it safe? Won't lie, I did consider that. But ultimately, I just ran it with the passing touchdowns. But do some line shopping, see where the best value is for you. The next look here, Where's my man Rico? So we're looking at Rico Dowdle. We'll call him Rico for this one. And there's a few different looks that I do have for him here. But the first one, straight into the bet first. I'm looking at his rushing attempts, if I can find them. So 9.5. This is a bet, by the way. So looking at Rico to get 9.5 attempts. Now, this did open up at 8.5, and it has been bet up to 9.5. On a lot of books, they're at minus 140, but I was able to catch this at like minus 110. So I've got to shop around. If it is at 10.5, I probably wouldn't play it, and I'd look at the other Rico plays. But I managed to find it without any juice, and I still think it's a good look at 9.5. Now, his role this season in the backfield has been increasing. He shares that role with Zeke Elliott. And if you looked at the season, you can see Rico's got a slightly higher share of his rush attempts than Zeke. But last week, we saw a massive shift in that game against Baltimore. He outsnapped him 37-15 after splitting them evenly in the 2 games prior. Now, if we look at his carries this season, 8, 7, and then in the 3 games, and you have to keep in mind these were in horrible game scripts for rushing attempts. In the second half of the last game against Baltimore, they only ran the ball 5 times. And the week prior against the Saints, they only ran the ball 4 times. So it's only 9 times in the second half in the last 2 weeks. This game, the Cowboys are predicted to win. We should see a neutral game script at the minimum. And if we do, the Cowboys should do some more work on the ground. So I do like Rico to get these rush attempts, but this is also why this has been bet up so quickly. So if it's at 10.5, I don't know, I'd be a little bit on the fence about it. But if you can get 9.5 at minus 110, I'd go up to minus 120. Then I think Rico's rushing attempts is still a really good look. The next play that I'm looking at for Rico is around his receiving yards. Now, this is at 14.5 now. It did open up at 10.5, but similar to his last play, everybody's been betting on it, but that's why you need to sign up to as many books as possible to see what else you can find. At 14.5, I honestly don't hate it. It just sucks to know that there was 10.5 available. Now, Rico has been targeted quite frequently in recent games, and he does have a favorable matchup here. So if we just look at his targets, last 2 games, 5 targets in both of those games. This Giants defense, they do allow significant receiving yards to running backs. So 15th overall in terms of receiving yards to running backs, they're in the bottom 7. So it is a nice matchup for Rico to catch. Dak likely going to pass the ball. It is prime time, so he wants all the glory, right? So I think Rico should get some opportunities in this game. So don't mind this. Minus 110, yeah, I think it's worth a look because if he's going to get 5 targets, he's gotten 4 and 3 receptions. He's getting on average 8.7, even we get conservative, 8 yards per reception. And if he catches that thing twice, you're pretty much covered. 2 receptions and he can cover this 14.5, but it might get a little bit sweaty. But I'm pretty sure the books at 2.5, they're favoring the under right now in his reception. So they think he's going to get 2 receptions. He's averaging 8 at the moment. So 14.5 gets a little bit dicey. 10.5 is an absolute steal, but I still think it's a good look, Rico, to go over his receiving yards. But I'm personally just playing those rush attempts, but I wanted to share with you all these insights anyway. The other look, we know we like his rushing attempts. We know that there's a chance he gets some yards in the air. The other look I have is his rushing plus receiving yards. So 58.5, if you shop around, I know that there are some 55.5s out there. The thought process around this is that the Giants, they do allow high yards per carry, 5.3, and they also struggle against receiving backs. Rico is getting a lot of snaps, which I mentioned earlier. The game script, it might favor the run. So if the Cowboys do take the lead, it makes it a good spot for Rico to do a little bit of damage in both. But if it is a neutral game script, we know Dak's going to throw it anyway. Rico could be one of his targets. So the rushing plus receiving, it's like combining the rushing into and his receiving yards that I like. I'm kind of molding them into one. Just to do your analysis to see, he's got a pretty close to this, 56 last week, 59 the week prior. Rushing yards, probably the bets, but I think there's also an opportunity for him to get some receiving yards. I guess taking rushing plus receiving plays it safe. What if they do fall behind by a lot and they don't run and he becomes a receiver? Or what if they get up to a big lead and they just run the hell out of that ball, right? He can probably cover this in rushing yards alone. So my personal favorite is the rushing yards attempted, but you never know, right? So 3 different angles you can take with Rico for that one. Next up, we're looking at Devin Singletary. So Devin Singletary, the bet that I'm taking is, let me sound the air horn. I gotta get rid of this. I'm looking at his receiving. I'm looking at his receiving yards or his targets. Not his targets. What am I talking about? I'm looking at his damn receptions. Wake your ass up. So I'm looking at over 2.5 receptions here for Devin Singletary. I got this at a minus 120. So pretty much this minus 119. But I know that this is on the move as well. So I like this play purely because I think there's a high chance that we get a lot more dump offs. Daniel Jones will probably scramble. That's why I do like a rushing prop for him. But I also think there's going to be a lot of dump offs here to Singletary. He's already averaging 3 receptions per game this season. Let's take a look. 4, 1, and 4. And in those games, 5, 1, and 4 targets, right? So he's getting the looks provided it's the right matchup. So 10 targets in 3 games, hitting in 2 out of 3. One thing I like this is he's caught 91% of the passes that have come his way, which is pretty good, which means he probably only needs 3 targets in order to cash this. The game script as well, if we think about it, it could favor the passing to backs. If the Giants are trailing, Daniel Jones could be looking at this pass out. The other thing I like about this prop is how some opposition running backs have formed against the Cowboys this season in terms of receptions. So Justice Hill and Derrick Henry, they combined for 3 receptions in week 1. But keeping in mind the Ravens, they had 45 rushing attempts in that game. They didn't even need to pass the ball. I think they passed it like 15 or 16 times. So that was a rush-heavy attack from the Ravens, and still their running backs combined for 3 receptions. In week 2, Alvin Kamara had 2 receptions. However, extremely run-heavy game. The Saints won by 25. They only had 16 pass attempts, so they were running all over the joint. But then last week, Jerome Ford, he had 6 receptions in week 1, Jerome Ford had 6 receptions. It was the only game script where you would say that the team had to pass against Dallas. So this is the game that Dallas won, and 6 receptions. So he was passing the shit out of that ball to that running back. So I think what I'm basically saying here is that this Dallas team, they are going to allow receptions to running back. You can see here they're bottom 10 in receptions allowed to running backs. You just need the right game script to follow. And if the Cowboys can maintain a lead, apply pressure to Daniel Jones, he's going to be slanging that thing around. So I like Devin Singletary to get 3 catches in this one. Could get risky and take him for 4, but I ain't about that business right now in the NFL, keeping it straight with these props. The other look, obviously, it correlates to this is in his receiving yards, over 16.5 receiving yards. He's got a high catch rate, and he's got a tendency to gain yards after contact. He should have opportunities to cover this line. So this is more of a pivot. If the odds for reception go down even further, then I think the receiving yards are a nice look. You can see it on this season. Last week, he had 10.8 receiving yards per reception. And if he's going to get 10 for every catch, he'll get at least 20 if he catches twice. I'm predicting he gets at least 3. So you're looking at potentially 30 yards there. This Dallas team, bottom 3 in terms of receiving yards allowed to running backs as well. So the receiving angle for Devin Singletary is what I'm thinking about. Now, I know that the rushing yards is probably where most people are going to bet, and I do have a look on that because everybody's seen how bad this Dallas team has been defending that ground game, right? So over 59.5 is where you could catch him at. It's moved up to 60.5, but neither here nor there. Now, he's cleared this line in 2 out of the 3 games. Last 2, really, 95 and 65. Everyone knows the Cowboys have been weak against the run. They allow the highest rushing yards per game. So I think this is the most straightforward play to have out here. But again, the reason why the Cowboys allow so many rushing yards is because of that game script. They've been losing these games by so many points. The opposition has been running the ball down their throats. So I don't know if the Giants are going to get into a big enough lead to just run every single time. So I'm a little bit hesitant on the rushing yards play here, but like it all checks out. Terrible defending the run. Why don't you pick the running back to run? It makes total sense to me. I've just got the game script in mind where the Cowboys probably get out to a lead in this one. So I'm a little bit hesitant on the rushing yards, but again, I wouldn't hate you if you played it. Now, lastly, we got Daniel Jones, and I'm looking at rushing yards, though, 29.5. Now he's a strong track record of running against these Cowboys. I think when I looked at his last 3 games against them, it was averaging like 40 to 45 rushing yards against them. This Cowboys defense is aggressive. They do create opportunities for Jones to scramble. They're going to be all over him. He's going to be forced to scramble, but I also think that's why he's going to pass it out to Singletary. The game script, it does suggest that he's going to need to make plays with his legs, especially against a tough Cowboys pass rush. So I don't think he has too much success passing the ball long. So there's going to be a lot of scrambling for Daniel Jones, or he's going to be dumping shit off to Singletary. Those are my thoughts. I didn't take a bet on Daniel Jones, and that's because this line's probably moved to a point where I'm not comfortable taking it. 31.5 is what I found on my books, but at 29.5, definitely something I could entertain. Now, the Cowboys, they do allow rush yards in general, but they do allow them to quarterbacks as well. So, yeah, Daniel Jones to run, I think, is a pretty nice look. But I've already got my heart set on 3 different bets already in this game, which is a lot, to be honest. 3 straight bets in one particular game is pretty wild. So a quick recap. So I'm taking Rico for over 9.5 rushing attempts. I got that at like minus 112. So make sure you line shop. If you can't get that, then taking a pivot to maybe his rushing yards could be a good look. I'm also taking Dak Prescott's over in his passing yards. I got that 256.5. That's moving up to like 263 on some books. So I'm pretty sure I got some good value on that one. And then lastly, we're taking Devin Singletary over 2.5 receptions. If the odds for that get juiced too much, then I think his receiving yards could also be a good look. But those are the 3 plays that I do have for Thursday night football. I think tomorrow I'll be working on plays for the rest of the weekend for the NFL. Had a bit of success running on these props, so I'll keep delivering on those. Let me know in the comment section. Remember the giveaway. I need to know who covers the spread, whether the total goes over or under, and if you happen to get both of those right, you'll go into a draw to win a 3-month Outlier subscription. So be sure to check it out. Get busy in the comment section. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.